Hello everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Indexer Office Hours. This is the town square for graph ecosystem participants to come together and to discuss the most important and relevant topics for indexers. This is a conversation we love participation, so if you would like to get involved, please do get involved in the chat box or by unmuting your mic. And if you're having any challenges unmuting your mic, let me know and I will get that sorted for you. Just as a reminder, this session is recorded, as many of you have just heard, and will be posted onto public channels like YouTube. So if you're concerned about privacy, please bear that in mind. And with that, let's get into today's agenda. So we are going to give a shout out to 𝗨𝗀𝗧𝗧, and this episode is 113, and this is with Anton from P2P. Anton is someone who is a regular IOH, and so he should be no stranger to all of us. It's a shame he's not here actually today. It would have been lovely to give him a shout out for his 𝗨𝗀𝗧𝗧 episode while he's here, but he's a product manager for L2s and the graph at P2P. And as many of you know, P2P is one of the more active indexers in the ecosystem and have done incredible stuff in the ecosystem to bring it forward. Anton, as I said, is someone who comes to these IOH conversations regularly. And also what I found out today is that P2P have put together this dashboard, which I've just linked for those of you who've recently joined, outlining the migration to L2. It's a dashboard that shows various data points. It's not live for reference. I believe it gets updated periodically, but it's very interesting insight into where we're at and where where things are. So definitely go check that out, and also go check out the 𝗨𝗀𝗧𝗧 episode, which I will post right here in the chat. There we go. And with that, I will wrap up the opening remarks and hand it over to Anna, who's going to take us into our regularly scheduled Repo Watch. Thank you, Payne.
All right. Today in Repo Watch on execution layer clients, we have had a new release from 𝗨𝗀𝗃𝗀, actually two new releases. So version 2.49.0. This comes with a warning. So with Polygon, do not use this release with Polygon on mainnet because it contains an issue which causes 𝗨𝗃𝗃 to falsely identify blocks as bad. And then the other release is version 2.49.1. So this is a hotfix that contained the previously mentioned Polygon issue. And both of these releases bring you support for 𝗨𝗪𝗀𝗧𝗧 testnet, which is released on this Friday. Then we have had a new release on Get. This is release number 113.0. This is a massive release, but what you need to know is that it ships a new database model which supports proper full pruning of historical state, meaning that users will never need to take their node offline again to resync or to manually prune. This is optional for now, and I have dropped the blog for the Get v113.0 so that you can all read the whole release note. This release also includes support for 𝗨𝗪𝗧𝗧𝗧. A new release on Firehose Heat. This is 1.4.14. Comes with a warning: if you are indexing Polygon or Mumbai chains, you'll need to reprocess the chain from Genesis as your existing Firehose blocks will be missing some system transactions. So please make sure to do that. Then we have had a new release on Cello. This is 1.8.0. And the most important change in this release is the implementation and activation of the Gingerbread fork. Moving on to consensus layer clients. Here we have a new Prism release, so 4.10 Alpha 0. It's a pre-release candidate to 4.10, and it includes 𝗨𝗪𝗧𝗧𝗧 testnet support. Then new release on Nimbus 23.9.0, low urgency release that includes support for Holesky testnet. And then a new release on subgraph radio. This is version 0.1.6, which includes a few small changes. Some things we have already tested Nimbus version 23.9.0 and the new version of 𝗨𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, the latest one, version 2.49.1, and so far we haven't seen any issues. And with that, I'm handing over to Juan. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. Okay, getting into Protocol Watch, we have quite a few things to cover, given that I wasn't around last week. But just getting into it, for forum governance, we have a few GIPs. Some are new, some are old. The first one is GIP 59, which is disable subgraph owner tags when publishing a new version. This is basically, thanks, Chris. This is basically a proposal to move the owner tags to 0%, given that how the curation was working for the past few years. And what the owner tax was actually thought about, like for a specific potential issue regarding upgrading subgraphs. It's only the only thing that is causing right now is just high friction for subgraph developers, given that the curation market is mostly just subgraph developers. It's just causing more friction that it's needed, and the proposal again wants to disable the owner tags, or basically set it to 0%. Next up, we have GIP 57, which is the chain integration process. This is, as the title mentions, a process for integrating new chains to the network. There's a lot of detail in the particular GIP, so if you are interested in the topic, you can go ahead and just go to the forums. Next, we have GIP 52, which is timeline and requirements to increase rewards in L2. As many of you know, the timeline for the 25% was on September 10th and is already live. So Arbitrum already has 25% rewards compared to the 5% that it had previously. The next stop would be, I think, 50%, but I don't know if there's a date yet, but eventually there will be a date, so yay. Next up, GIP 58, which is replacing bonding curves with indexing fees. There has been a little bit of a discussion regarding what the change means to indexing rewards particularly. So yes, the GIP itself kind of like doesn't make the change to indexing rewards a little bit explicit, and I think it just goes in tandem with a lot of other changes that would be introduced in Horizon. The official response from the team has been that they are taking this feedback and trying to come up with some solutions or explanations to all of those things without, like, having to do all of the Horizon thingy first. But anyways, next up we have GIP 51, which is the exponential query fee rebates for indexers. This is also live now. It has been deployed, I think, on Sunday/Monday this week. So it's live now. Again, Pablo could probably explain a little bit as I'm seeing in the chat. But yeah, that's pretty much all of the news that we have for forum governance. Next up, we have forum research, which, again, as usual, with the first week or 2 weeks of the month, we have all of the core dev updates. This includes Pinax, GraphOps, The Guild, Edge and Node, Messari, Streaming Fast, Semiotic Labs, and Geo. If you want to go ahead to know more about each of those updates, you can find the link in the agenda. Also in forum governance, we have a small thread regarding the integrity of the data may be open to question. This is about a particular indexer, I think, that's having some issues with data integrity in a particular subgraph. Basically, he has an issue with the subgraph, which basically breaks the subgraph, but some of the other indexer can index the subgraph correctly, apparently. So he's questioning whether this doesn't cause an issue with data integrity. This also could be an issue with like the particular indexer infrastructure or some other stuff. So yeah, it would be great to have some feedback from other indexers in that particular thread. Maybe you can probably help this indexer figure out what's the issue, whether it's a particular issue for himself or whether the other indexer is actually having some issues that causes the subgraph to actually be indexed. I don't particularly know. I haven't really delved deep into the particular case, but it would be great to have some feedback from other indexers if possible. Next up, we have the contracts repository, and we have, again, as the forum governance GIPs that were merged, we have a ton of PRs merged, as well as some open PRs related to those GIPs, mainly the exponential rebates one, which had a lot of different PRs merged so that it was able to be deployed on Sunday. And then for the core network subgraph, we have a fix that was related to also the exponential rebates issue. It caused basically the allocation closed event change signatures. So it was causing some allocations to not be registered by the subgraph after the update. This has been fixed, so all of the indexers should be working now. And I think that's over for 𝗨𝗀𝗧, so I'm going to hand it over to 𝗨𝗂𝗧 now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Juan, for the update there, and also Anna for your update too. So as we've seen in the chat, I'm going to hand it over to Pablo, who's going to talk to us a bit about a temp check he wants to run.
Hey, thank you. I hope the music's not too loud. So let me know. I'm trying to stay away from this. Maybe after we can. But okay, so yeah, I mostly wanted to check on the last 1.5%.
I think your audio is cutting off. Yeah, I thought it was my connection.
Oh. Is that a bit better? Now you'll hear the music a bit more, but
yeah,
okay.
That's better.
Cool, thanks. Sorry about that. Where was I? Yeah, we did the 25% increase on Sunday. It was kind of a mixed experience because we had some issues with the exponential rebates and we were only able to fix them on Monday morning. So I was thinking for the next step, it would be good not to do it on a Sunday. So if there is consensus on this, I would like to propose to the council. I mean, we've already been sort of discussing this, that is doing the 50% bump on September 25th. That's on Monday, and that's almost 2 weeks from now. So I would like to hear if there's any thoughts about that or any concerns with that. Yeah.
I think it would be good to see the amount of stake that has migrated from mainnet to Arbitrum to kind of, I guess, approach the 25% rewards level before. I don't know. I wouldn't want the amount of stake, migrated to be too low before doing the next bump.
That is a good point. So right now it's about 300 million GRT between stake and delegation, and there's about 2.6 billion on mainnet. Just looking at the Explorer network page, so it's about like slightly over 10% now. Like trying to do the math in my head, but it's been growing quite a bit, and it was, I think, already over 5% by the time when we did the 25% bump. So I think if it keeps trending as it is right now, I would expect it to go close to 25% in the next week or so. I don't know what you folks are seeing in terms of what your delegators are doing and how you are thinking about the stake transfers. But yeah, I would expect it to go close to 25% very quickly. And I mean, the reason to keep, like, I have not delayed more is because it's been noted here before that, like, we don't want to lose momentum, and it's very easy for us to get into a situation where more people move delegation than needed. So we go slightly over 25%, and then L2 becomes like less attractive than mainnet for some time until we do the next one. So yeah, I mean, I don't know where we're gonna be in 10 weeks to a bit more, but we do need, like, since it takes some time to go through the council approval and transaction process, I would personally prefer to err on the side of like moving a bit faster, as long as there's no like actual issues on that. I don't know if that answers your concerns, Chris, or not.
Yeah, definitely. And I would agree that if we keep up at this migration pace, you know, the amount of stake migrated shouldn't be a concern.
So yeah, I was thinking of like starting the snapshot code with the council, like we're kind of coordinating that, but I think we were thinking of proposing that in the next in a few days. So there's still a bit of time to see if it keeps trending in this way, and we can still like delay if it seems like it's slowing down. But we still could have a few more days before you folks in the council need to vote, and then a few days after that to actually start the defender transaction. So like, there is time to delay it before, like, yeah. Once we have one council signature is when it would be good to execute at a planned time. But yeah.
Seems like Derek's got a question here. Let's see. Is it in relation to the conversation?
We have seen several subgraphs transfer, if that's what you're asking. I know at least of Teller, and like we had to solve some UI quirks as they went through it, but they did transfer, and they haven't reported any downtime. So I think it does seem like the forwarding and everything is working as expected, or at least we have heard no complaints on that yet.
Awesome. Good to hear. Stake machine is typing. In response to Derek's question. Any other thoughts on this topic or questions? This is a good opportunity for us to kind of like voice our thoughts and share with core devs. So if anyone doesn't have anything, please do mention in the chat or via voice.
If there are no strong concerns, I would suggest moving forward with September 25th, maybe conditional on maintaining some, some of the what we've seen, the rate that we've seen in people transferring stake and delegation over the next, I don't know, 2-3 days. Does that sound good?
Yeah, sounds good to me. Though I would also echo stake machines point just around wanting to see a certain pace of subgraph migrations as well, because we wouldn't want to migrate too much of the capacity of the network without demand migrating as well. And I don't know what a sensible kind of target for that is.
That's a good point. We do have, so moving from 50 to 95 is when we have a few more requirements in terms of like having more people around. It feels to me like the network is still over provisioned in L1 and L2. Like it feels that at 50%, like we would expect to have about half of the capacity on each side. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm under the impression that should be more than enough to cover the current like query requirements. But yeah, I mean, for following steps, like for 50 to 95, I do think it would make much more sense to like have a harder requirement on a certain number of subgraphs.
That makes sense, Pablo.
Question.
I'm not sure I understand the question from Peter Pan.
Yeah, me neither. Peter Pan, if you could elaborate more, that'd be great.
Oh, I think I know what he means. So on the hosted service, apparently, there are a bunch of subgraphs that have been sent straight to L2 in preparation for Sunrise, I guess, or whatever it's called. So I guess they were just testing. I'm not entirely sure if that's what he refers to. But he wants the same to happen from mainnet to L2, like subgraphs that migrated it from mainnet to L2 so that we have like a way to know which ones have migrated. I guess. I'm not sure. I'll let him write.
So when opening a particular subgraph page on Explorer, if that subgraph has been transferred to L2 or is transferring to L2, it should appear that there should be a banner saying this subgraph has been transferred to L2. We do have that in the code. If there's any examples where that doesn't show, then please do send it to us so that we can investigate. But yeah, it shouldn't show a 404. I think it might show a 404 on the L2 side before the owner completes all of the steps in the transfer. It's a bit harder to detect that scenario. But once it's deployed on both sides, it should show the banner on the L1 side. And even like when you start the process on the L1 side, it should show the subgraph is being transferred, and you can still query it.
Amazing. Any other thoughts, comments on this? If not, I think that's the temp check. I think there's general support for this, Pablo.
Sounds great. Cool. Thank you. Thanks, April. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Thanks so much for sharing with the community, and thanks everyone for your input. Appreciate that. Cool. So next, Payne, I think you have some things you'd like to share about substreams, and we have a few substreams experts in the room. So it'd be interesting to have that conversation. So you want to fire away there?
I don't even know where to start. So, yeah, well, I'm running into all kinds of issues. It's not just me. I was talking to Matthew, which told me to talk with 𝗨𝗂 from their team, and basically they're having kind of the same issues that I'm having with literally out of the blue the substreams stopping, no errors or logs in the graph node side, nothing on the Firehose side either, or like substream side either. This feels like just some very alpha software to me. Like the more I play with it, the more I feel like this is not ready for production at all. I'm not sure if there's any other like 2 or 3 other indexes running on the network in prod, but all I can see is complaints in the Firehose channel from time to time, and that's about it. So I think like either we get Streaming Fast team to like get their stuff together and like fix the documentation, fix the like provide more support, and get the software working, or just collaborate together to just signal the shit of GRT on their substream, so we push out the indexes to be more vocal. Because like I feel like this is to me it's a total shit show. I'm not sure if it's a substream issue or a GraphNode issue either. And I'm not sure how to open a GitHub issue if I don't know what broke, and nobody is able to tell me.
I would say certainly open a GitHub issue somewhere, and we can work out which side it sits on. I don't know if you've got more specific context on the issue you're saying, that whether this is a sort of silent stopping of substreams powered subgraphs, just to confirm we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah, it's basically just stop. Like I restart the graph node. It says it's connected to Blockstream, and then it stops there. Does nothing. This is happening both on Pinex's endpoint and also on my endpoint. With nothing. No fix in sight. And Vincent says requires GraphNode restart after it stalls. It does not work on my side. I restarted it like 10 times. It just works out of the blue, or it doesn't. It starts working when it decides to work. This is not, it's very weird.
I know. I think you're in touch with Matthew, but did you were you able to pass over? Because I think you can see what's happening on the substream side, see if it's sending data. I don't know if we have that.
It seems to have sent data, but then at some point it says that it doesn't find any V2 endpoint. I don't know. I can connect to the substream via the CLI. I'm running the latest version of the GraphNode, the latest version of Firehose, the latest version of Geth. Just as a side note. So the substreams itself is running because I can connect to it via the substream CLI.
With precise, for the exact same substream.
I have to check,
I guess I'm wondering whether this is the best format to do the debugging versus, I guess, talking more generally about how we can
for sure.
do things faster. Matthew, I guess I don't have a question for you, whether you had any other hints, or whether, because I think you had been in touch with Payne, of how we could support you both better in getting to the bottom of this.
Since Mark Andres has started experiencing this problem since the recent Firehose upgrade, restarting substream tier 1 or GraphNode fixes it. I think it depends on if Firehose is running in tier 1 or tier 2. Didn't get a chance to troubleshoot yet, but that's a typical integration problem. Issue can be on either side. Let's open two issues and let the teams fight. Yeah. It's weird because it started happening out of the blue. In the last 3 days, it's been so apparent. But before, it wasn't that much of an issue. I was connected to the Pinex's endpoint, and it just worked perfectly fine. And then 2 or 3 days ago, it's just stopped, and I spent at least half a day today trying to look into this, and only to ask Pinax's guy that is taking care of the network what's his status on the substreams, and he just replies basically with the same thing I'm seeing on their side. So it must be something weird going on with the recent versions, I guess. Thank you, Chris. I'll save that, and I'll send all the details in that issue.
And just on the point there, Adam, about this being the right venue to discuss, I think it'd be cool if if we did something like that, maybe like going through the weeds on the call might be useful for other people. After all, Index or Office Hours started off as like a like an office hours type situation, right? So yeah, if you guys are open to it, I think it'd be really cool to get into the weeds of it today.
It's good that we kickstarted something. That was basically what I was trying to do. To get more people aware and vocal. Because like when this thing works, it's magic. When it doesn't, it just pisses me off so much. Like I wish we could nail all the bugs. Like this is like super cool software. Like it's full of issues that you don't even know where to look to start to look into.
Yeah. Sorry, I think someone was going to chat.
I was going to say, we definitely. I know this has been open for, or you've been hitting up on this for a little while. So let's get to the bottom of it. I would say Abel's that debugging with an audience isn't necessarily doesn't necessarily lend itself to getting to the answer quicker, as much as it might be an interesting experience.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, taking this off sync is better in my opinion. I just wanted to kickstart the discussion and like make other people aware, especially in our Indexer community.
Yeah, this is
I would say so. I don't know if everyone saw an issue that actually Matthew from Streamfast had put in GraphNode just about where he was sort of seeing sort of sync speed differences between like writing directly to Postgres versus via GraphNode. And Felipe from EdgeNode has made some changes which seem to address the bottleneck there. So that leads to like quite a substantial. I won't quote the numbers now because he was going to add them to the issue, but some like further improvements in sync speed for those subgraphs. So that should be going out hopefully in the next GraphNode release, which should hopefully be coming soon, Chris.
Ooh, alpha. I like it. Spicy. Let us know when you have a release to test, like a release candidate or something. I would so much love to try it out.
For sure, yeah. I think we're trying to release a bit more often. But yeah, I guess no promises at this point. But we'll let everyone know, and particularly you, Payne, given you're having these issues.
Awesome, good to know. Yeah, I mean the Indexer stack, like the Indexer agent service and everything, just gets updates so much quicker than the graph nodes. And I feel like there's like you guys are waiting to release like quite a substantial amount of updates in a release, which doesn't always like. Yeah, I think we can all benefit from faster release times. It's like especially with stuff like this, which are game changing. By the way, I have a question. Just this is for the broader Indexer community. Have you guys tried to Graphman copy a subgraph lately? And how did that go? Because I kind of want to move some subgraphs around in a bunch of shards, and I want to know if I'm going to get stuck again or not.
Yeah, I've been doing quite a lot of them recently, and it's working great. I'm very happy to see that. So I'm able to move subgraphs from one shard to the other. The only thing is, initially I had a problem with my DB setup, and it was not working at all. It actually even just basic graph thing wouldn't work. But turned out there was some missing configuration in my database, something that GraphNode should have been able to handle automatically. But using GraphMan, I was able to manually create the missing relations, and since then it's working great.
That is so cool to know. Yeah, thank you. Dude, I can't wait to get my hardware up and running. Like, honestly, like this is so exciting. And like having everything split together in shards, so you can easily move things around whenever you need them to like be on separate actual machines. That's gonna be so cool. What would you recommend? Yeah, it does. What would you recommend to do? Like sync everything from scratch when it comes to subgraphs? Because I've been running like subgraphs on the same database for like the last 2 years, I guess. And I guess it would be a good exercise to compare the POIs between the two databases too. Like, I wonder how much it changed in both 𝗨𝗀𝗀𝗳𝗂𝗧 stack, the GraphNode stack, and Postgres stack.
Yeah, in theory, it should be the same, so you should be able to just keep the same sync subgraphs. But yeah, there's you gain a little bit more of confidence knowing that you're syncing from scratch using the latest GraphNode official release and the latest relatively stable 𝗨𝗀𝗀𝗳𝗀𝗀 version. But for some subgraph, it takes a lot of time, right? So I don't need to tell you that. So it depends on how in a rush you are.
Yeah, I was thinking of like just copying the whole database over like basically home, and then like syncing everything from scratch on a separate database. Basically just to see how like just to have like actual serving data on one hand, and on the other hand like syncing everything from scratch just as a test, and like to replace those later on. And like Vincent says, we also need more control over naming schemes. Yes, that's going to be a big issue, I guess. How are you dealing with those kind of issues in with shards and the inability of like putting subgraphs where they should be, Mark? Because the index agent just does it randomly, like it allocates to like random index nodes and everything.
I'm not sure that I could see that could help, but I'm not sure how problematic it is. At least it's not problematic to me, so maybe I don't get the issue.
Vincent says they're creating the deployments with GraphMan. Yeah. I don't want to do that for like 2,000 subgraphs. Okay, for any VIP deployments. Got it. From what I could tell from Ford last week, I think he said that after Tiago is coming back, that's one of the main focuses. Was this, or was it another thing?
Sorry, what are you referring to by this?
The naming schemes, changing the naming schemes of subgraphs when the agent deploys them.
That's not at the top of the list, but that is related to something that we'll work on soon, which we had done in the past. It's basically relying on GraphNode config for subgraph assignments. And so you can use the advanced GraphNode TOML configs with different deployment rules, subgraph name matching rules, and stuff like that in order to decide where subgraph deployments go. So you can do like sharding rules with things like maybe all subgraphs for a certain network go to a certain shard. There is a issue in graph node that had us revert that, and we'll put that back in. So that's probably related to the naming. That's not at the top of the list, but definitely something we could prioritize earlier if you guys request it.
Yeah, it would be nice to actually know your priorities so we can like decide where should the focus be going on. Because I feel like this should be a decently high priority, because like for people that are trying to serve as many subgraphs as possible, they will soon start running into issues. Like my database has gone up to like 22 terabytes last time I checked. So yeah, having a way to like know from the get-go where your Uniswap subgraphs end up in, it's gonna be perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. As well as maybe we're thinking about doing another workshop on sharding and advanced graph node configurations. We had a pretty successful one. I don't know when that was, 6 months ago or so. And I would definitely recommend going to that YouTube recording. There's a lot of good info there, but we'll try to do another one to help support this growth into new chains and do things like sharding and deployment rules and stuff like that.
That would be amazing. But if we let the agent, I mean, if we take the ability of the agent to deploy stuff and rely on the graph node, we still need a way to name those subgraphs. Like instead of just index agent.
It's like a little bit. You're right. It's like a little bit orthogonal, like the naming. But I think when we do that, we can also update the naming because that's part of the same process, basically. The agent will still set names and send deployment requests. It just won't include what node that deployment goes to, and the graph node will get the deployment request and it will make decisions on what node the assignment goes to. But I see your point though. Like right now, the subgraph names are not that meaningful, and so we can do some work to make it easier to manage your subgraphs and your dashboards and stuff by using more meaningful names.
All right, sounds good.
I think because forward I might be misremembering, but I think that was the issue where we tried to change that to be more meaningful names, but then there was an issue on the graph node side, I think, with like grafted subgraphs or something. So
yeah, it was basically like when you tried to redeploy a grafted subgraph, it would kind of fail silently and not start syncing, and that led to problems. So we reverted all those changes.
But I think that change has been made on the graph node side at least, so it's so hopefully that's unblocked for when it comes up.
Perfect. That's what I was hoping to hear. Steak Machine had a question in the chat about moving a particular deployment to the node that the deployment rules point to and serve queries from there. Yeah, the idea would be that this would happen automatically. I don't know if you're asking about more of like a current state manually moving things.
Question is basically having the agent be aware of index node Y and Z, but not X. And you put all the deployments on it manually on index node X. And if the agent panics that it doesn't find the deployments and tries to do some random shit, I guess that's what he's asking.
No, yeah, that should be fine. Like when you do the move, the subgraph table will update in the main graph node database, the primary. And so, yeah, like Marc-Andre is saying in the chat, graph node will know where that subgraph is assigned and how to route the queries there.
But would the agent panic because he doesn't see the subgraph anymore and tries to redeploy it?
The agent might try to redeploy it. It could be smarter here, but it won't cause problems. When the agent does ask for statuses of deployments, it doesn't do so per shard. It just can send that to one graph node. So any graph node knows about all the others basically through the database. So yeah, it shouldn't cause problems.
All right, cool. Does that answer your question, Steak Machine?
Yeah, Steak Machine. That's totally a plausible way to operate things. The one big caveat there is that when you do move to another shard, it has to do a pretty big copy job. And so it's basically copying all data from one shard into the other and then starting syncing from that other shard. And so just be careful with that. It's fairly expensive and it can especially cause some bloat in the one of the shared subgraph tables that gets hit a lot. So it could cause slowdowns of other things when you're doing that. So just be aware.
I see Marc-Andre is typing, so I'll let him finish. So is Chris. Okay, seems like there's a response to the previous question. Okay, a question has been flagged. Question to the Substreams team. When are you expecting the launch of your Explorer website?
Explorer?
So
Is there a
Explorer
Substreams
website.
Explorer?
Yeah, I didn't realize this was on the cards as well. Maybe, yeah, if anyone on the Substreams team, I see Colin is typing, maybe he has some thoughts there. Yeah, I wasn't aware of this. The Substreams Explorer, cool. Let's see. Seems like Colin is typing there. Okay. Seems like development's just started. No launch date yet, but it's top priority. Cool. Good catch, Peter Pan.
Do you have a link to that monthly report?
I will try and grab one for you.
Yeah, they're all on the forum.
Hey,
Chris is on it
Ford.
already.
Speaking of pruning subgraphs, do we have like actual support for pruning? And also, I know I talked some time ago with, I believe it was either Juan or Slim Chance about like pruning not being actually pruning because it doesn't like delete all the useless data. Like, do we have better support for pruning now?
Yeah, I mean, what we were talking about is it prunes old versions of entities.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been using pruning personally, but my understanding is that it works. We haven't been doing it on things like the hosted service or backstop indexers because basically we want to make sure that people can still query it for historical entities. But I'd be interested to know from you guys, and I'll probably try to look at some gateway data as well, as just how many queries are actually coming in that aren't for the latest block. I'd imagine 99% of queries are for the latest block. And if you only need to serve queries, not time travel back to historical entities, then you can prune your data and get a pretty big reduction in storage usage and potentially index size and indexing speed as well. Though there's a caveat that there could be some slowdowns too when the pruning is happening, because it's kind of having to delete data when data is getting added. So I'm mostly curious if anyone's explored it, and I think it's a cool new avenue to explore for cost savings and making a more focused indexer just for data, like the latest data. And to be clear, like say you're saving entities for each day, like you wouldn't lose old days, you would just lose like the older state of that entity as of say 20 days ago. So in our current database, we keep every single entity change. It doesn't update the data in place, it adds new data. So pruning would basically kind of get rid of old records that are no longer used.
Yeah, that's a feature I've used on a handful of subgraphs, like very old. I call them legacy subgraphs, like the _値 subgraphs that were created at launch, and they have huge signal and basically 0 queries for the past 3 years. So I pruned them, at least the larger ones. Seems to work fine. Obviously, if one day there's any query, any historical query, that will create a lot of problems because the gateway will receive errors from my indexers on these subgraphs, and I guess the gateway will punish me very harshly. But because it's 0 queries, I'm not too concerned. I don't think that's very risky. But doing it on more recent subgraphs or any subgraph that has any sort of minimal traffic, that's probably something I would not recommend because of the gateway would not be able to see that the reason for the failures, and will just probably stop sending traffic to the indexers altogether.
Yeah, there's some good questions about how the gateway handles pruning in the chat. I'll need to double check how that works and whether or not the current state of the indexing statuses that indexers report is enough to basically let the gateway know what range of blocks an indexer can serve queries on. Otherwise, like you alluded to there, the gateway might just see failed queries and stop selecting that indexer for that subgraph. And it'd be good if it was aware of the valid block ranges instead of more wholesale blocking that indexer because it's failing.
Yeah, it would be nice to have like a parameter posted on chain, basically, with a transaction, where the gateway can read it. So each indexer, when it registers, they can also register the last X amount of blocks, basically, to be queried for.
Yeah, something like that. I don't think we want to put it on chain because it could update. Like the pruning is a dynamic thing that keeps happening. But the gateway to indexer relationship, like the gateway is constantly querying indexers for their indexing status per subgraph to be aware of what the latest data they have, so they know what they can serve queries on. So that kind of off-chain connection could be the way that indexers share their pruning status. So basically via indexing statuses.
And so there's a history blocks field on the indexing status for a given subgraph, which tells you that number of blocks that have been pruned to. That I don't know if the gateway is aware of that though yet, or takes it into account currently. I think because it's still quite a new feature.
You know what would be a nice feature? To move old blocks from a subgraph to a different shard. say you can move like Uniswap's first 3 years onto a hard drive and keep only the latest blocks on NVMe. But that requires basically subgraph sharding and not database sharding, if you know what I'm referring to.
Yeah, so I think that sounds pretty similar to a design or an approach which David has thought about, where essentially, so currently pruning is constantly, or not constantly, but periodically getting rid of old entities, whereas those old entities could be put into a different sort of separate shard periodically. So that kind of subgraph partitioning, which kind of give you the benefits of pruning while not meaning you're throwing away the data, so you don't have the downsides, is something we've talked about.
That's super nice to know. Okay, cool. I will definitely gonna chat with David around this, and like try to push for the feature, because it's like I feel like it's super useful, especially for guys like me or Pinax or like Data Nexus that will index all the subgraphs and like have large amounts of data available. Steak machine is probably because the microphone is like so close to the keyboard. Like I get that a lot whenever I'm typing on my keyboard and I'm using the integrated mic. All right, cool. Okay, do we have any other questions, or shall we wrap up the call?
Yeah, any final questions, thoughts?
Just a call out. Let's go on to 𝗨𝗀𝗧𝗂𝗧 and let's nail down all the issues there, and also follow the GitHub link that Chris has posted, and let's post all of our information there so we can finally nail this down.
Yep, I just reposted the link there for people to check out. Cool. Well, thank you everyone for coming along to today's Index Office Hours, and thank you all for contributing. That about takes us to the end of the call. As always, you're more than welcome to stick around and vibe if you so desire. But as for the official episode, we're going to put a wrap to it. Thank you so much, and we'll see you again next week for another edition, same time next week. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Cheers, y'all.